Yeah, so spring break marked the official halfway point of the semester. So what accomplishments from the past 8 weeks stand out for NAU, and what do you hope to accomplish between now and spring commencement?
So time flies, as you all know. We are indeed halfway through the semester. It's been a semester, I will say, very different than most spring semesters since I've been here at NAU. It's my 5th year, and so I have some history to draw on. And what I will say is that the difference of the first half is the emphasis we had to put in the way we allocate our time, talent, and energy. So by this I mean I spent my first 5 or 6 weeks actually living in Phoenix. I was sort of in a residency of sorts to ensure that I was close to the action. And by that I mean ensuring that... Oh, please come on in. Oh.
Where is he? And I looked and here he is.
At the beginning of every calendar year, the governor comes before the legislature and does her State of the State address, and that officially launches the legislative session. The legislative session usually runs through June 30th, and the main thing, other than the thousands of bills that have been produced in this session, is approving a budget that both the legislature and the executive can agree on, sign off on, and then July 1st, the new fiscal year, we run with that. Well, this year I felt that it was important for NAU to be there, physically present from the day that the governor launched the State of the State through the first several weeks when all of the negotiations around what the revenue projections are versus what the state financing needs look like and how they're going to figure that out happened. And so I had a chance to really spend a lot of one-on-one time with legislators, with our government affairs team, with the governor herself and her team, trying to talk about NAU's value proposition, and that notwithstanding that we know that the budget situation for the state is difficult, that we felt that the value we add to the state should be honored in the way that they allocate funds. You always have to hedge your bets, so I spent some of that time not only talking to the appropriators, if you will, but also with our donors and friends and partners. As many of you know, we recently launched a fundraising campaign. It's a $300 million campaign. It's called Elevate. I am proud to say that we are about $250 million in already. We have $250 million or so already raised. We're doing fantastic this year. This is so far our second highest ever fundraising year, and we still have a few months left, so it might be our highest ever year. And the importance of that is not so much that this money covers for the gaps that we may see in state funding, but that it's a signal to the future, right? A lot of these funds are pledges, are monies that go into endowments that pay off over time. It's not like you can spend them tomorrow. But the majority of them go to student scholarships, to strengthening academic programs, to infrastructure. So what we're seeing is that while the state, and we can talk about all of the dynamics that go into that, but while the states are disinvesting or perhaps holding us stagnant in terms of their investments, we're seeing that our partners, our alums, our donors are betting in the future. They're saying we like where NAU is going and we're moving that way. One of the most recent such examples is the Maria and Steve Sanghi gift naming the College of Nursing, for example, right? So that first half has been really geared towards positioning NAU. Not only in Phoenix, I've also spent some time in DC, in New York City, and other worlds where we're fortunate to have a seat at the table in terms of policy. So for example, I sit on the NASIKI board, which is NASIKI. It's the National Advisory Committee for Integrity and Quality, Institutional Integrity and Quality. And that's the federal body that counsels the U.S. Department of Education on whether or not they should reauthorize accreditors who are the ones that come to the universities and say, yeah, you guys are doing a good job, you deserve to continue to receive federal funds, right? So as you can imagine, the landscape of accreditation and the impacts that may have on institutions is changing dramatically as part of shifting policy perspectives at the federal level, right? So how do we bring not just the NAU voice, but the regional public university voice, the public university voice into that discussion has occupied a lot of our time during this first half. As we pivot to the second half, we are then looking at knowing the various scenarios that can come out of those discussions, right? What the actual budgets would look like, what the actual policy shifts would look like. How do we organize ourselves in the next couple of months so that we can withstand any policy whiplashes or any funding challenges as we head into the fall? Because we didn't have the summer to prepare, right? So now we're looking at, of course, celebrating the great challenges. I mean, just this weekend we won 2 national championships, NCAA national championships, right, in track and field. I sent a note to the region saying, you're all looking at Tucson and the Wildcats and you know, March Madness, but the only university that has national championships in Arizona today is NAU. So let's keep that in mind, right? So other than celebrating those big wins, and we are spending a lot of time this second half in positioning. So that's talking to our deans, our cabinet, the vice presidents, the division leads, our department chairs about enrollment management around this is what we know the scenarios could look like. This is what our projections are in terms of enrollment. This is what we're thinking about in terms of revenue generation. What do we need to do, right? What do we need to do between now and commencement so that we at least have the instructions we need to then take those summer months, a little bit lighter in terms of, you know, everything that's going on campus, to really think thoughtfully about the next academic year. And so it's, because all of that, it's been a very different spring semester so far. The external pressures and the need to recalibrate have been sort of top and center.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Elias Stringer. I'm an assistant copy editor for the Lumberjack this semester, and cool. And NAU has a hazing education awareness and prevention policy in accordance with state law. And this semester, the now closed NAU Delta Tau Delta chapter saw the death of an 18-year-old student from alcohol poisoning and off-campus pledge event. And police reports included a demand for pledges to finish 1 handle of vodka to complete their initiation. This is not the first time that an NAU fraternity has been closed due to hazing allegations, but it is the first time that an NAU student has died from related activities. How will this death inform hazing prevention going forward, and how can parents trust their children are safe when they join an NAU fraternity?
It's a great question. First of all, let's establish what I know everybody in this room and in our community understands, that this is a most tragic event. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, when we're getting ready, I have 5 kids, 3 grandkids. I just cannot imagine not only the individual loss that we have in who this student was and what they were preparing to become, but what it means to their family and friends and loved ones who entrusted our university with their future education. So, tragedy. National tragedy, because as we all know, this is something that plays out every year, every fall, across every university campus that has Greek life embedded in it. And it is because of this national challenge that universities are held to very high account, both by federal regulations and in Arizona in particular, through state regulations and laws, as to how it is that we need to approach training and and oversight and advising of these groups, so that they can deliver on the promise of that collegiate experience that we associate with Greek life, while minimizing the risks of what we know that in practice happens far too often during initiation into these groups. We feel at NAU very good about our compliance with the law, and not just the law in as it's written, but in the spirit and what it is that we do in order to ensure that these things don't happen, and yet we can have the upside of the collegiate experience. But we have a no or a zero tolerance policy with when things like this happen, and so we immediately interim suspended the fraternity. As you all know by now, the fraternity has been dissolved and banned by the National Fraternity Council. We have been supported the Flagstaff PD as they have conducted their investigation. We
I'm going to jump in before
yeah.
you say too much. We're limited on what we can say because we promised the Flagstaff Police Department that we would not offer a lot of public comment so they could do their investigation. So as long as it's speaking in high level, but I just want to apologize for not allowing a deeper discussion at this time, but I think there will be time. But right now we're trying not to offer a lot of comments. Thank you.
Thank you for reminding me of that. The other thing I think that still honors the high level, and just punch me if it doesn't, because we need to be respectful of these processes, obviously. We have commissioned our own independent investigation, and we are committed to learning as much as we can from all of this. As you know, universities are in the business of continuous improvement, and if there is anything that we find through this process that would lead to enhancements to the work that we already do, you can count on us doing that.
Yeah, and I have another question. So NAU plans to construct a 40,000 square foot nursing building in the area currently occupied by the Peterson Hall, the Academic Annex, and Babbitt Academic Annex buildings, with a tentative 2029 grand opening. Where does the university currently stand in this planning process, and how will the services in these other buildings be relocated?
That's a really good question. I think we are, so the known knowns, the things we know right now is that we were first able to secure through the legislature and the executive branch the funding for the nursing building through what is called the speed bond process, which has real good implications for the university. We started talking about financial sustainability. Well, through this process, as we go out to market to get the bonds that will allow us to pay for the design and build out of this building, the state through lottery funding will pay for 80 cents out of every dollar of the debt, and we pay for 20 cents out of every dollar of the debt. So it's a very affordable and sustainable investment for the university. The second thing is that we have gone to market, I believe. We could corroborate this with our CFO. And have been able to secure the bond issuance that will allow us to do this. The third thing is, as it relates to the location, the repurposing, the connection to other infrastructure moves across campus, for example, SBS West, which is something that we are looking into and how we repurpose that. Those are ongoing conversations. They involve a lot of consultation with our campus community and all the people involved, right? If you're in a building that will no longer be there tomorrow, we have to consult with you about ensuring where a better location would be that would still satisfy the needs of the work that you do. And so those conversations are ongoing, so I think it would be premature for me to give you a very direct answer. What I can promise, though, is that in due time, and Kim can help facilitate this for all of you, I think the best source of information would be our VP of Facilities, Jeff McKay. because he is, as we speak, talking to all the groups that will be impacted in one way or another, and has a better sense of the master campus plan, which we developed 2 or 3 years ago, even before we knew about the nursing building, that had plans for all of these buildings. And so he would give you a more coherent answer than I could right now.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
My name is Rosa Polito, and I'm a writer for the Lumberjack. And then my question is, in January, NAU announced it would be pausing its planning for an upcoming College of Medicine, citing a lack of sustainable funding and appropriate infrastructure. What are these existing resource gaps, and what needs to be done before the College of Medicine can formally open?
It's a great question. So for the last several years, as you all know, we've been advancing what we call the Elevating Excellence Strategic Roadmap. And this is something that as a community, when I started 5 years ago, we came together in 6 months. We said, bold and boundless future, what does that NAU need to look like? And as we moved forward in that work, it became clear that because we do have a commitment that is distinct from that of U of A and ASU, on many fronts, to the people of Arizona, that the situation related to health deserts across the state needed attention. And that perhaps that's one area where we were particularly well suited to step into and help. In fact, the way we talked about this with the medical community, our Arizona Board of Regents, donors, partners, was U of A is into the science of medicine, ASU is into as they launched their new school, into the engineering or the technology of medicine. We are into the community of medicine, right? So we launched a 2-year process through which we engaged with several volunteer groups, national and regional and state health experts, and developed a new kind of College of Medicine with a new kind of curriculum geared towards not developing a College of Medicine that would be deep into research, either in the science or the technology aspect, but more into practice. Students who would be really aspiring to serve local communities, rural, tribal communities, right, and help us drive this work forward. A program that would be designed so it would be, because you're dropping some of these research components, sort of a fast-track program that would allow students to graduate with low debt, if any at all. So then they could actually, be positioned to serve local communities rather than go into other more specialized, areas. What transpired during that process is that we got to the point where all of the I's were dotted and all of the T's were crossed, and we had the proposals to move forward. So then the question is, what's the next step? Well, the next step is usually you hire a dean for the College of Medicine so that they can start hiring faculty and developing the programs. And you establish a location and the partnerships needed so that those students, when they're going through the program, have the placements, the residencies that they need in order to formally become MDs. We got to that point just as about the time when the state cut the university's budgets. And at about the time when the federal government started signaling that it was going to change the way it funded universities through the various programs that we have available to us. And so all of a sudden it became a very risky financial proposition for the university to embark on. Now, I think I announced the pause of the College of Medicine a year and a half or so ago. Thank God. Because if we go back to the beginning of this conversation, the financial commitment that we would have had to make in order to make this possible would have significantly constrained our ability to navigate these very difficult times right now. To your specific point about what's the biggest obstacle on the financial front, I will say that it has to do with the infrastructure. We do have ways to get around that. So if, for example, with partnerships with existing hospital networks and community-based service providers, and in fact, we had identified several of those. But the situation was such that we decided it was important to pause, to regroup, and then to find the right moment in time to launch. The key word is pause. Because we had gotten to the point where it's higher a dean or not higher a dean, so it's not higher a dean. But the conversations continue. And the moment where the conditions change, which could be a year from now, 5 years from now, I don't know, but the moment the conditions change, we are committed to this because this is a true problem in Arizona. And we at Northern Arizona University, one of our 3 prongs of our mission statement is to serve as drivers of social impact, and we can't imagine a more important task right now. One last thing I'll say about this, because I think it helps put it in perspective, Northern Arizona Healthcare. So if you all have been following Northern Arizona Healthcare's public pronouncements in the last few years, at one point, Northern Arizona Healthcare was working with the community to build a new campus outside of the current one. That went through a ballot proposition. The community rejected that. Northern Arizona Healthcare has come back a couple of years ago and said we're going to explore new locations for the Northern Arizona Healthcare campus. They went through a couple of year process of that. They announced not too long ago that they would make public where the new location would be. And if you just search back a couple of months into the news, you will see that their announcement was that they were going to pause. Why? Because exactly the same things that I said. One thing that I haven't said that's important that also factored into this, and I know this may be more information that you need, but you're all reporters and journalists, so just trying to contextualize. The one big beautiful bill that was signed into law has a provision that would hit this next year, which is a dramatic reduction in Medicaid funds to the states, right? I believe that that's one of the conditions that, or considerations that NAH mentioned recently. It was certainly one for us because of 2 reasons. If you're planning a college of medicine, Medicaid is an important part of your ability to finance that for the populations you're serving. And also, if you're a higher ed institution and the state is going to receive a massive cut in Medicaid funding, the state needs to find that money somewhere. It's usually through cuts, not tax increases, not in Arizona. And who is at the top of the cutting list usually? And this is nationally, higher ed. Why? Because higher ed has a revenue stream that others do not. And you're not going to like what that revenue stream is. I don't like it either. Tuition and fees. Next.
Hi, I'm Molly Hunter, senior reporter. It's nice to see you again. The Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention has now released 3 red flag alerts for the treatment of transgender people in the United States. And that suggests that anti-trans rhetoric and national policy fits the historical pattern we see for the on-ramp to genocide. And as you just said, NAU has made a commitment to educate, support, and empower all students to reach their full potential towards a larger goal of driving that social impact. Mm-hmm. So our question for you is, as transgender, non-binary, genderqueer, two-spirit, students' civil rights and physical safety are increasingly threatened, how can they expect targeted protection and support here?
I mean, the short answer is that they can expect that NAU will provide the education and the support and the protection. I believe those are the 3 items that you mentioned, up to the line that is lawful. We are a public institution. We are embedded in a federal and state government and regional government, and in a society more broadly where these issues are being contested. We are in a particularly important institution, which as universities, we are supposed to be the protectors and the defenders of ensuring that we are creating the conditions for the marketplace of ideas, to ensure that all of these perspectives are being discussed and are being addressed, and that we are putting forth solutions that will ensure that the values that we as an institution and that those that we represent are protected and respected and honored. But there's a boundary there that we need to navigate very carefully. Now, it's not to say that we don't have individual agency. Each and every one of us in this room has to recognize we have individual agency. I'm not just the president of NAU. I'm a father and grandfather. And as I've said in this group before, lovingly and thoughtfully. In my family, the queer outnumber the straight. So I have very, very, very strong opinions about this. You're not just students or individuals. You're friends, your siblings, your sons and daughters, right? Nephews and nieces. And you have agency. And so what I want to say with that is that it is important to know, and I want everybody to know, that we are doing everything that we can in ways that are visible, but in ways that are defensible, given our current place in the world. But part of that work is also ensuring that each and every one members of our community understand that they have agency that they need to bring to bear in whatever way they feel most comfortable doing, right? The reason we may have some constraints and again, marketplace of ideas. There are people on our campus that feel one way about this issue and people that feel strongly in another way, and a broad spectrum in between. But one of the things about the marketplace of ideas is that we engage with these topics in a way that not only help us find solidarity as it relates to our own perspective, but also to better understand the viewpoints of others, not necessarily because we're going to be convinced, although we should be open to embrace other perspectives, but because they help us become better advocates as we exercise our agency. And I don't know about you, but November seems to be not too far away. And that is one way that we can exert that agency, by getting involved in the broader policy and electoral conversations across the country. As president, what I can say is that we are doing everything we can to uphold the law and protect our students and live our values. That may fall short of some people's expectations. And I will say right now, and there's a camera looking at me, that falls short of my own personal expectations because of what I said earlier. But that's why there's a saying that we're all in here to make sure that every day through our actions and by exercising our agency, that we try to perfect this most imperfect of unions. And recognizing that even though sometimes it feels like we take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, given our own perspectives of the world, allowing for the plurality of perspectives in our society, that is just should be even more motivation for us to be engaged in the process.
Thank you.
Let's do this back. Alrighty. Yeah, so earlier this semester, Cline Library refurbished its first floor gallery into an AI hub using a financial gift from an NAU alumnus. Mm-hmm. The hub was met with in-person and online backlash, with a prominent through-line being confusion as to why NAU did not consult with the student population during the hub's creation. So I guess, what do you have to say to the students who are frustrated with this new AI development?
Well, I'm sorry they're frustrated, but continue to elevate your voice. I believe it was fall of 2005 at Convocation where I announced that this would be the year of AI empowerment. So it should not be a surprise. Since that announcement, we have made it clear in various forums and with various groups that our intent, going back to the marketplace of ideas, is to ensure that we engage. And as I've said repeatedly, I'm privileged to have many kids and grandkids, and I will say that the spectrum of AI enthusiasm to AI doom and gloom and bordering on hate is real. And this is a university, and we engage with these things, and we bring our perspectives to bear, and we try to convince others, we try to engage with the issues, we try to understand where others are coming from. With my president, and I have my very own opinions, right? But let me put my president's hat, because you're interviewing the president of Puerto Rico, not José Luis, not the Bad Bunny, enthusiast, none of that. You're interviewing the president of the university. And as the president of the university, what I can say is that I have a huge responsibility to ensure that every student that comes on campus has an opportunity to engage with the issues of the day, and there is no bigger issue than AI. No bigger issue. As I look at how, and that is true from the perspective of the impacts it has on humanity, our humanity, not just humanity as a thing, but our humanity. The impact it has on creativity, on intellectual property, on the environment, on the consolidation of power, the surveillance state. But it also has an implication on what will be the new norm of what is expected of a graduate. And I have 28,000 students that are hoping to be graduates, and what that will mean for them as they step into the workforce. And what I would hope is that we create the environment here through the AI Hub, through our curriculum, new programs that will be coming in place, through our symposia, through our, the different ways in which this is embedded or not in our pedagogy, that we create the environment for our 28,000 students to engage, and to come out of that with enough knowledge to either leverage the technology to their individual benefit and that of their community as it relates to advancing their careers, right? To leverage the technology and what they've learned in a better way to serve as even stronger advocates against the technology and what it means for society. To leverage their learnings at NAU through that engagement to better mediate the polarization around this technology in a way that perhaps will have a direct impact on the policies and the practices that rein in the more complex implications that this technology and adoption could have in the future, while perhaps uplifting those that would have better implications for society as a whole. So as a president, I have to be agnostic in a way, in terms of trying to push my own agenda, and rather trying to create that environment that will hopefully, through the sum of this give and take, empower each individual that goes out of NAU to get us to a better place. I'll give you one concrete example of what's happening on the employment aspect of this. We all read the newspapers and are alarmed or engaged by different things perhaps, but we know what the news are. Right now, as we speak, a lot of the majors that during my 40 years in higher ed, 10 as a student, 30 as a, well, not 10 as an undergrad, I mean, that includes my grad, and 30 as an administrator and faculty member, a lot of the things that we said were important back then for college graduates to have are even more so. It's critical thinking, right? It's the ability to adapt quickly to change, to embrace diverse perspectives, to engage with uncertainty. Those things have always been paramount, and those things that are now more than ever important to follow. The flip side of that is that over the last 30 years, there has been an increased call for investments in majors that now are the most threatened by AI, right? Like computer science, perhaps, and business and law. And I'm not making this up. I mean, there's just a couple of studies that came out this past week about what areas of each of these professions are exposed by AI versus, where are we today in terms of the impact it's having on entry-level jobs in these areas. So what that suggests to me as president of a university is that for computer science and all of these other areas where AI is taking over some of the, and this is still contested, this is just what we know today, where AI is taking over some of the tasks and knowledge bases that entry-level graduates would usually have been brought in to deal with. It just suggests to me that our graduates need to be at a higher level than that. And that has to be reflected in the way that, for example, in the case of computer science, AI is integrated into the curriculum, right? There's no other way. The other thing is to say, well, AI does computer science, let's shut down our computer science programs. We don't need any more computer scientists, right? So the whole thing about AI engagement, the whole thing about the AI hub, the whole thing about our year of AI empowerment is about engagement. It's not about a prescribed orthodoxy about whether AI is great or not. I get enough smack, is that how you guys say, from my kids about my own use of AI or my own leadership on AI. And frankly, I love it because it really helps me calibrate my thinking about this topic.
Thank you. Behind this back.
All right, NAU joined an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Flagstaff in October with the hopes of collectively exploring new strategies for achieving carbon neutrality. A portion of this agreement would include investing in off-site renewable energy projects through a virtual power purchase agreement, a tactic emphasized in NAU sustainability reports. Can we get an update on this intergovernmental agreement and its contributions to NAU's carbon neutrality goals?
We continue to advance this work. I will actually have a meeting coming up maybe this Friday with our students and with Eric Nielsen and others that are heavily involved in this work to see what has transpired in the last year. And so I would suggest that for a more direct answer and broader scope of the conversation, that Eric Nielsen, our Chief Sustainability Officer, that you entertain an interview with him, Kim can help facilitate. We are moving according to plan. Now, I don't want to sugarcoat it. A lot of the goals that we have set up for ourselves, that the city set up for itself, that many cities and states and jurisdictions and even corporations have set for themselves in terms of carbon neutrality, have been upended. They need to be rethought. And part of that has to do with the federal government itself deprioritizing this work. And it's not a statement when you deprioritize the work, when you pull out of climate agreements with the rest of the world, when you eliminate the infrastructure that monitors whether or not you're making progress towards this goal. It's also that by doing that, the funding that many of these goals and statements that were made by cities and universities alike were made is gone, right? You all may have been following the federal government's policy changes to how they fund research through the National Science Foundation, through the Department of Energy in particular, right? And which research projects they are funding and which ones they are not. It shouldn't surprise you that a lot of the projects that they have decided to stop funding and stop asking for proposals for funding for have to do precisely with climate issues. The whole question about whether or not climate change is a hoax. All of this to say that while we have been proceeding along the timelines that we set forth 12, 24 months ago in terms of intergovernmental agreements, in terms of power, sharing agreements, in terms of how we are outfitting our buildings with the technology that allows us to control them so that they are more energy efficient? Yes. Will that momentum hold? I can't say it will. And I'm just trying to be as transparent as I can. What I will say is that we will do everything that is wholly in our power to live our values, right? And so I think over the winter break, and if you all talk to Jeff McKay, our VP of Facilities, he'll give you all the details. We shut down several buildings. He said to people, well, if you need an office during the break, you can come over here instead. Because by shutting down that building, we dramatically reduced the energy consumption needed to heat the building. And that goes towards, those commitments. So if it's something that's within our realm of authority and financial ability, we will continue to advance it. Is 2030 still a viable timeline? Eric will probably have a better answer to that. I haven't circled back to him. We had discussed when we started seeing a lot of these shifts in the federal government's attitude towards sustainability issues, we started talking about the need to go back to our planning process, look at the assumptions that we had made to reach the goals, see which of these assumptions have changed and how those changes mapped onto the timeline. And I guess, that's frustrating, but it's reasonable. I mean, if we made some assumptions and those assumptions have changed, we need to move forward on that. But I'm still, again, within the things that we have control over, I'm still very happy with how we're moving forward. I think we're way past time.
Yeah,
Am I talking too much?
You guys know you're doing great. I think we have like 5 minutes. I forget does that sound right? Okay.
Yeah.
5, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
No,
you weren't here when they were talking about their new print edition, which is probably more exciting than what we're doing now. So.
Yeah, I guess we can, Abby, if you want to do your 2 questions.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. I'm Abby. I'm the managing editor here in the Lumberjack. And just on the same note, the electrical and water demands of AI data centers remain impossible to ignore when discussing sustainability efforts. So beyond simply acknowledging these impacts, how can NAU take concrete steps to mitigate the environmental impacts of the AI technologies it supports?
That's a great question, and that will depend on how we actually build out our own approach to AI. Right now, I will say that in terms of infrastructure, we're operating at I would probably say if there's 4 tiers of universities engaging with AI, we're in tier 4 in terms of our actual deployment of AI, right? Across the university. That's an area that we have to work for, and that as we do, we have to discuss these issues. Some of these issues are a little bit out of our control, right? I recently had a conversation with the CEO of APS, who is trying to figure out how to ensure that the economic boom that's coming into the state through the establishment of semiconductor plants and data centers that will host the LLMs that we would, through our prompts, be contacting, how they can do that in a way that's sustainable and environmentally friendly. So in one way, it's through that agency that we were talking about earlier. It's ensuring that as the APSs of the world and the legislatures and city councils of the world are grappling with the water and energy requirements of these data centers, that the conditions are set so that we are being as effective and efficient as possible. Once that is set, that's just like a black box. That's what it is. Then we have some resources on our end as we decide how we ramp up in terms of our use of AI, or make those tools available to our campus communities and more broadly to Northern Arizona. We are the educational hub of the whole Northern Arizona ecosystem. How we monitor use, how we ensure, for example, there are sandboxes where you could go in and put your prompt, and it will tell you, if you put this through Claude, it's gonna, imply this level of environmental impact versus Gemini, versus ChatGPT, versus Copilot, right? And so there are also tools that can be embedded to ensure that if we are going to be using AI, that we are doing it eyes wide open, right? And according to our values. And by doing that, you're also sending a signal to the market that, you know what, you may want to make sure that the way you're tokenizing and embedding and doing all of these things that go behind the scenes in order to process a prompt are as efficient as they can be, because that's where people are going to. Not that you have to, just to be clear.
Thank you so much. And then just last question. Academic year 2025-2026 was NAU's year of AI empowerment. Before that, academic year 2024-2025 was the year of strategic finance. What can NAU look forward to going into 2026 and 2027?
Antifrigility. It's going to be the year of antifragility, and it's going to be probably the year of refounding. Everything we've talked about today suggests that if we were to, let's go through this thought experiment. Let's say there wasn't, something happened and university and NAU ceased to exist. But the assets are still here, 6.2 million square feet of space. Maybe the buildings would be a little bit, worse off because of deferred maintenance. The beautiful Flagstaff region as a teaching and learning and research environment. We have all of these assets, but there's no NAU. And you're all convened into a council. And you're asked, if you were to design a new university for Northern Arizona with the assets you have and the things you know about federal policy, state policies, polarization within society, the questioning of the value of higher ed, the implications of AI, not only in terms of knowledge creation and innovation, but also in terms of its impact on the environment and so forth. If you knew all of this, what would that university look like? And one thing I can tell you is, if you think about this overnight, because this is how when I can't sleep, I design universities in my head. I say, okay, I'm going to start with 30 students, and then you start growing. What do you have? What you don't have, etc. If you think about this, you soon realize it wouldn't look like what we have today, because the university we have today grew over 126 years under very different policy changes across time. And that's why you've heard me say many times that NAU today is at the top of its game. I was just in Washington, D.C. at the American Council of Education talking to other presidents, and I always have this little exercise with them. I like to banter with them in a playful way. I say, ask me how good we are. And they say, well, what's your graduation rate? Highest it's ever been in our history. What about retention rate? Highest it's ever been in our history. How about fundraising? We have raised more money in the last 4.5 years than in the previous 17, and at this pace, in 2 years, if you ask me again, I'll tell you that we have raised more money in 6 years than in the previous 120 in our entire history. What about research? We just became a research one institution. And so we go on, and they go, oh, José Luis, whatever, And when they're like bored, I say, wait, you haven't asked me about the most important one, because nobody ever asks about this. Ask me about my marching band. Because they just opened the Thanksgiving Day Macy's parade. So you ask me about NAU today, and we are at the top of our game. You guys are going out and doing great things. We are a top earnings institution. Carnegie just classified us like that. That means that an NAU graduate recoups all of their investment in NAU, out-of-pocket money, and the time they invested in NAU when they could have been working right out of high school in 3 years. We're doing great, but we're very brittle because the world around us has changed. Because the Medicaid cuts could trigger more state cuts, right? Because we've gotten at a place where affordability is really important. But affordability can't come at the cost of lowering standards and lowering quality, right? Because we have come to a point where federal policy is really testing some of our most fundamental values and some of the things that we have invested the most in, right? Carbon neutrality, for example. And so the year of 2026, 2027 will be the year of antifragility or refounding to antifragility. How do we reinvent NAU in a way that will lead to antifragility, which means that we will be able to sustain shocks, we will be able to sustain policy whiplash from one administration to another, things, just keep moving from right to left, if you will, in a way that will allow us to focus on our mission and not constantly be trying to, I don't want to go back to Phoenix for 5 weeks. So let's figure out a way to be anti-fragile. That's the year of 26, 27. Yeah?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. And we got to take a selfie because I've always taken a selfie with you.